Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 814. Today we're going to take a look at Steam Power. This is from Wallace Designs, designed by Martin Wallace. And this is just kind of arriving now. And what this is a 1 to 5 player Steam-esque, almost brass-esque game. It's a train game where you'd be, making routes and delivering goods and all that fun stuff. But it has a nice kind of twist on the sort of traditional way or the previous way that things have been done. And it's also relatively on the lighter side, but that does not to say it's not without interest and interesting decisions. So let's go down to the table. Like I said, it's 1 to 5 players. What I'll be showing you here is the deluxe edition. So some of the stuff that's plastic that I'm showing you in a retail edition or normal edition, it will be cardboard. And so on. And I'll try to point that out a little bit as I go through. I'll give you a brief overview of how the game works, and I'll come back and tell you what I think. Okay, here I've got what a map might look like set up for a 2-player game. One thing you can see down here at the bottom is there is a player count, so anywhere from 2 to 5 players is suggested to play on this map. They will be a stack of maps. There's a few extra in the deluxe edition, plus there's this cat power expansion, which I'll talk about in the review. But I think all the maps that come in the retail or deluxe are this kind of cloth, which I am a huge fan of. So you can see it's just kind of a cloth that you could lay out there. I really think like the illustrations and the little hills and rivers and things like that pop very nicely on this material somehow. Maybe I'm just imagining that, but I really kind of like it. And I think this is the second game from Wallace Designs like that. The original was Bloodstones, and this has the same kind of plasticky sort of pieces here. This is deluxe. This one I know because the rules tell you that the retail game comes with cardboard for all of this. And for example, we have here these tile holders, which do not come with the game, but they are separate. You can get these. And then you have these kind of dominoes, and these are different contracts. So if you have a gray and 2 black, then you will get $2, 2 points, and be able to build 2 track. Whereas like this one here, you'll be able to deliver these goods, get $3, 3 points, and then draw 2 more contracts, 2 more of these things, and so on. So in the base game, these are cards. And so what players are going to be doing, you're going to be playing until one player fulfills a certain number of these contracts. And that's going to change based on the number of players here. So you can see here in a 2-player game, 14 contracts need to be fulfilled, 3 players 11, 5 players 8, and so on. So once somebody completes that many contracts, they've laid them in front of them, they've completed them like so, then you're going to finish out the round. So you're going to get an equal number of turns, so you keep track of who goes first. But other than that, you just keep playing around and around until somebody does the X number of contracts, finish out the round, and then you'll total up the points. The points are going to come from your contracts. They're also going to come from these cities on the board. So you can see this is a gray city. If you flip that over, that means it'll be sort of completed, and then whoever sort of owns that city or has a factory on that city then gets 2 points. And there are also some other 4-point cities in here. These don't have any particular color or good type, because these other ones, like here's a white one, a black one, an orange one, and so on. Those represent goods, which you can see over here. But these purple ones, there's no goods involved. It just, this, for the 4-point ones, you're going to look at who has actually built track and connected to it in that case, and then divide up the 4 points amongst them. So a little bit different, whereas whoever has a factory on these colored ones that are completed will get points that way. So how does the game actually run? The first thing I want to say is this is actually a great rule book, really well done. Just a little shout out to Paul Grogan, who's a fellow YouTube board game creator. I see his name on a rule book and I'm usually pretty happy, and they're usually always good. And so as a team, they did a great job with this. On the back side here, you have all the player actions. So this is the player aid, and you will not need this after about 5 minutes. So you have here the different actions. So you can lay track, you can build a factory, you can fill a contract, you can take new contracts, or you can take money to the bank. So we'll just do these in reverse order. This is simply take $3 from the bank. Everybody starts with $5. You'll be using that money to build track. Sometimes, most of the times track is free, but sometimes there's a cost. You want to try and never do this action if you can help it. If you're taking this action, I will just say this as gently as possible, you're playing poorly. So that's not a judgment. It's just saying once you get to a point where you're taking money like that, then reevaluate what you're doing, because you'd never want to take this. This take contracts is simply to draw 2 contracts out of this bag or out of the card deck and then put them in front of you. So everybody has a hand of these. Here you can see I've got these little stands that they're on, but if you don't have these, you'll just have a hand of cards. And if you don't have the stands, then you can set those down pretty easily. They don't fall over too much. Now there is no limit to the number of contracts that you can have. You start the game with 5 drawn, and you can just keep drawing them. If somebody has to draw contracts for some reason and there aren't any in the bag or in the deck, then you get to choose a random contract from the player who has the most currently in their hand. So that way, that's how that works. So, as far as this action goes, you want to try and avoid this if you can, but there are some times when you just cannot avoid taking 2 contracts. Because again, you want to try to fulfill as many as you can, and if you don't have contracts that give you more contracts, like this one, like I said earlier, when you complete it, you get some contracts, then you might be up a creek and you have to take the take contracts action. Next thing to do is fulfill. We'll actually skip that one and go up to the top now. We're going to do lay track, and you can see here, most of the time it's free because you just put it on a kind of a plain space, it's 0. Or if it's on a hill, $2. Mountains is 4. If you have to sort of build over somebody's track that's already built and then build like a crossing through, it just costs you flat $2. It doesn't matter the terrain underneath, and you can't build track on water. Now when you take the track action, you can do 1 or 2 track. So let's take a look here. Let's say we're the yellow player, and let's say I've got a few contracts in this case that require a white good there. You can see that. And so in this 4.1 looks like a good idea. So I'm going to go ahead and just lay 2 track between them. So I'm going to do 1, 2. So there's my action, and I'll put a little train there in my color to show that I own that. Now I've established myself on the board, and any future track that I build has to dovetail out of my pre-existing network. So it has to come off of either of these 2 cities basically. I can't go start building track up here and so on. Now you could like start track, let's say if I wanted to go this direction, I can only build 2 track, and so maybe I did like this here, I put this one here, and then I did this one here, but okay, there's my action, and maybe that was my second action of the round. I don't think I said this earlier, but you get 2 actions. You can do the same action twice. You do 2 different actions, however you want to do, but you do 2 actions. So you could lay track, build a factory, or take contracts, lay track, however you want to do it. So if I get to the end of my turn here, I'll put that little marker there to show that that's going to be my route. The next time I take a build track action has to be on a incomplete track and finish that out. So let's come back to our next turn, and we'll just say we finished that off there. So that's the lay track action. There's a couple other nuances with like running into people and stuff like that. I don't want to bog you down on that. It's explained very well in the rule book, and most of the time it doesn't really come up. So the next action we'll talk about is build a factory. And this is a very interesting thing here. So let me just lay out some stuff on the board, and that way it's a better explanation. So here I've set up a little bit of a network from red and from yellow. Now when you take the build factory action, you need to build it inside anybody's network. So I don't have to build it along my route. I don't have to be connected at all. As long as somebody has connected to that city, I can do the build factory action. And there are plenty of times in the game where that is a good move. So when you build that, depending on the number of players, if you're playing a 2-player game, you can see this is an orange factory or orange city. If you're playing a 2-player game, you will take 4 of these cubes or plastic boxes here, and then you will put them onto the city like that. So these are now ready to be delivered. In a 3 or more player game, you will put 5 cubes on there. Now sometimes you will get a bonus action with a contract we'll talk about here. You can see this is plus or minus. So when you do this build factory as a bonus action, you don't have to do the fixed number. So 4 in a 2-player game and 5 in a 3+ game. You could do 1 less or 1 more. So you could even have 6 cubes down. And the reason you might do that is as the game runs out, you might want to complete that factory sooner. You may not have a lot of time. So you actually want to put less goods on there. So once these are emptied out, which I'll explain in a minute, then we're going to go ahead and flip this over This will no longer produce any goods. Nobody can build any factories on there. And that is now worth 2 points to the yellow player. So the reason the yellow player might put that in there is because they go, oh, red maybe wants to deliver a lot of orange cubes. And even though I won't be delivering myself because I'm not connected to this network, then somebody else will do it. And that'll give me some points at the end of the game. Now the last thing to do is to fulfill a contract. So here we go, take a look at this one here. So as an action, you can fulfill a contract. And this is to deliver, in this case, a gray to black goods to any city that I'm connected to with my trains. My factories don't come into play there. So as long as I can pick up and deliver cubes along the way and get it to any city that I'm connected to, it doesn't matter where, that's got to be a gray and 2 black. In this case, I will get $2. I will put this in front of me, I will get 2 points at the end of the game, and then I can do basically a build track action. I can build 2 track as a free action. Or I can get $3, 3 points, and then like I said earlier, do the build factory action with plus or minus the number of goods. And then I've already showed you this one as well. This one allows you to take 2 contracts, which is nice because it gives you more opportunity. And then there's this one here, which is worth 5 points. It doesn't give you any bonus action, but it's worth more points. So let's take a look at an example here. So this one, if I'm trying to fill this one, I need 2 orange, a white, and a gray. Okay, and let's say I'm the yellow player here. Now I'm good because I've already got a city with some white goods, and I'm connected to that city. So it's my factory, and I'm already connected to it. So I can just say, okay, to fulfill that, I'll just discard the 1 off of there. That fulfills that one. So now the next thing to look at here is I need a gray, okay? Now I'm connected to a city with gray, so there's not gonna be any transport fee, but that is a red factory. So in this case, I need to pay $1 to the red player. They'll get that $1, and then I can put that on my rail. Since I'm right there, no big deal. Okay, great. We satisfied now the white and the gray. Now I need the 2 orange. Now the orange is up here. Now that's my factory, so I don't have to pay myself to produce the goods, as you were, but to deliver it to a city I'm connected to, and this is the closest city I'm connected to here, I need to use red's transportation, and I need 2 of these. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 1, 2. So I'm going to pay red $1 for each link that I use of them. In this case, it's only 1. So I'm going to pay them another $2. So I paid them $3, 1 to get the good out of their factory, and then 2 more to transport along that. So I've paid all of that. Now the nice thing is here, I'll get $3 back from the bank, get some points, and then be able to go build another factory somewhere else. And I'll put this in front of me and score it. So that's a kind of a simple example of fulfilling a contract. Obviously, if there were more links along the way or even more players, I might be switching back and forth between, like, say the green and the red player, paying them different amounts and so on. And again, once we deprive a city of the goods, which came when we put the factory on there, that's now worth 2 points at the end of the game, but it's not making any more goods for the rest of the game. Because you're going to score the buildings with the completed factories, the contracts, any of these 4-point ones here, which we'll explain now, and then also a little bit of a bonus possibly, which I'll explain. So this one, if there's only 1 player connected to it, they're just going to get 4 points. But if the red player had come in here and connected to it with another track, then they'll split that, so they each get 2 points. Now it doesn't matter how many times you connect to it, so if red had connected into it twice, that doesn't matter. You just look at the number of different players connected, and then that's it. So if there were 3 players connected, 3 different colors, everybody would get 1 point. That's how those work. However, there are on some maps, you can see this map is actually pretty plain. You've got some hills over here, but the rest of it is just grasslands. It's just flat. So from a terrain perspective, not very interesting, but you'll see we can only put so many cities, and we had some left over, which are at the top here. So after you randomly have placed cities, and you just draw them out of a bag here, if you have any left over, then those that are left over will score bonus points. So in this case, you can see we've got gray, white, and then a 4. So the grays and the whites and the 4-pointers are going to be worth plus 1 point at the end of the game. So instead of 2, the grays and the whites are going to be worth 3, and the purple 4s are going to be worth 5. So that makes a little bit of a wrinkle here, because not only are you just trying to think about the goods and whatever you're trying to deliver, you're like, okay, well, if I get factories on those, that's a little extra points than normally they're worth. And so you'll see some variety in the maps with that kind of setup. But yeah, that's basically the gist of the game. Okay, so that is Steam Power. Let's just go right into my 3 pillars. First one, we'll talk about player time, and it's to 60 minutes. I think that's about right. That might even be a little long, kind of depending on, I think, on the player count. But yeah, so that's probably fine. I mean, I think a 2-player game with experienced players would go way quicker. But you know, it seems about right in the ballpark wise. Now let's just shift right into player count, because I've played it 1, 2, 3, and 4. I've not played it with 5. So my hesitation there is probably with 5 players, maybe it would go an hour, maybe even a little bit more. But hard to say, because it is a very quick and snappy game. You know, you take your 2 actions, you just try to fulfill the contracts. There's not really a lot of complexity in terms of mechanisms and stuff like that. Any kind of complexity strategy-wise, I think, is probably quickly sort of sussed out. But I will say, in terms of player count, my favorite would be the 3 or the 4. I really, really like it there. Now, that's not to say that I don't like it at 2, but that would say 2 would be my least favorite. And my second favorite would be solo, because there is 2 kind of solo modes in here. There's a basic one, which I do not like at all. But there's like an automa one where you basically draw contracts to sort of dictate the action of what the bots will be doing. And then that will tell them to either try to fulfill the contract or build track or whatever. And you can run multiple bots too. So you could play against 2 bots, which I've done. And I thought that was really cool. That was a lot of fun to do that. Or you could throw a bot into a multiplayer game if you really wanted to. And I think I would do it. You know, I don't think you really need to if you're playing with 3 or 4, but I mean, why not? I think it's fun, and it's very simple, and it works well, and it doesn't feel like some bots. They can kind of, in some games, they can feel very cheaty or just like way overpowered and like doing weird, ridiculous stuff that you have to kind of like reparse how the game works because of the way the bot acts. Or they're just like not great. And this is kind of a nice middle ground. It's not like the greatest solo game I've ever played, but to me, I really enjoy the game, which we'll get to. And so it does give the opportunity to kind of still play the game even if there's nobody around. And I think it works well. I think it's good. But the one thing that the bot just can't do is do those weird, clever plays that people can do. And when you're playing with 3 or 4 players, and there's a lot more opportunity for that than there is when there's with 2 players. Because it's a little bit of like a, tug of war back and forth with 2 players. It's not terrible, but for me, I want the extra players. And the reason I say that, and getting into my last pillar, is like, what is this game like? The box says Steam, but it feels like brass to me. And the reason for that is because the whole build factory action. So I can go build a factory anywhere there's a network. Even if it's across the map, I can just go plop factories down, because I can see, they're going to be wanting to get, blacks or oranges or grays or whites or whatever it is. And I'm still working on my thing here. So I can just plop that out there. They're not going to get the 2 points for the factory being completed. They're going to have to pay me to generate pull the good off of the thing. That's going to help me to either maybe build track if it's a terrain heavy map, or pay other people to deliver goods that I wouldn't be able to get to because because of the length, that I got to pay extra money. Now, the one thing I didn't mention, which I should have, is that at any time that you are not able to get a good off of the network, you can pay $5 to the bank and get any good that you want sort of out of the supply as you're completing the contract. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind with that, and this is actually a very sort of subtle but really cool thing, is even if it costs you, let's say, $6 or $7 to get the good, because it's way on the other side of the map, there's a bunch of track already built, in that case, you still cannot pay the $5 to the bank. If it exists on the board, you've got to go get it, even if it's going to cost you more than $5, which is an interesting thing. So that's just a little wrinkle on that rule, which I forgot to mention in the walkthrough. But what's really cool about this is it's not like, I mean, it feels like Steam. I don't want to say like the designers made a mistake. They shouldn't have called it Steam, because they totally should have. It's in the Steam ballpark. But I think there's something kind of new and fresh here in two ways. And again, it's the kind of brass feel of it, of like, oh, you're completing my factories. You know, you're flipping my buildings like you do in brass, and getting that off of. And I think Via Nebula was another game that was also kind of light on that side, that had that similar kind of vibe here as this. But although it's been years since I played that, but it does strike me as such. And so you've got that kind of thing, but then also like you're kind of like controlling the economy a little bit. Not just like, oh, I'm going to build here and kind of use the whole brinkmanship thing and get some points off of you, but there is like a real kind of play there, because as the game sort of develops, and there really are not going to be any more white factories on the board because they're just all used up. Like, you have to kind of keep that in mind and watch the supply of certain colors go away. Because if everybody, like, if somehow, like, let's say you deal all the cities out, I'm kind of talking in theory here, but I've seen similar things like this happen. Let's say all the whites are kind of clumped to the center of the map, and there's maybe one off to the side. And then, so it can very quickly get used up, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I got white in my contract, and so those are gone. And then any contracts that you have that might need white, they're useless, because you're not going to be able to get them on the board, or that, you know, they're going to be so rare and so far away from you that you've got to, you know, pay extra money there. So thinking about some of that in your future plays, where you can get set up to get a lot of money early, and then have that money to make it so it's not so consequential for you, you know, in the end game, that you need to pay a little bit extra to make those deliveries and get those contracts. So the game, like you see, like I'm trying to say, the game is very simple to play, but after you play it a few times, like, oh, okay, there's like a little bit of, you know, planning and stuff like that I got to do, and kind of watch what's going on here. And then the other sort of second part of that is, with all that kind of stuff I talked about, it's also like dirt simple to just play it. Like, just break it out and play it. And frankly, don't worry about some of that kind of, you know, fuzzy long-term sort of strategy thing. Just get in there and play it, and, you know, go for the contracts, and then also, you know, try to complete some of those contracts to let you draw other contracts, so that prevents, you know, from you having to take that action to draw two contracts. And also realizing, again, this is kind of a learned thing, but you don't want to wait till the very end where you're like, oh, even if I complete all these contracts, I'm going to be under, you know, whatever the target number is, 14. Even if I complete all these, I'll only have completed 12. So I'll still have stuff to do, and that, you know, nobody else caught up. So you want to, earlier rather than later, do that draw contract action. Don't wait till the end, because then at the end of the game, you got to be way more efficient. In the early game, you can still be a little bit loosey-goosey, so it's not as punishing as like an Age of Steam or a Steam in that way, where like if you get out the gate sort of awkwardly in the early game, you're not going to be abused for it for 2 hours. But I would say in this case, so if you start off kind of, you know, with maybe like, not a bad draw, but just kind of a, you know, you don't get the double contract draw or something like that, or some other things to build track for free and get those extra bonus actions, which are just huge, right? Because you want to be able to like score points and then also do something I would have normally done. So as the game moves along, you want to try to, I mean, in theory, everything should be contract plus action, which will maybe give you the next thing for the next contract, that kind of thing. So that's a very interesting sort of dynamic and sort of you know, line to try to walk down. But yeah, I'm really, I know that's a little bit mechanical, but I'm really enjoying this game. The different maps are neat. Like I said, the solo mode works really cool. I like how sometimes the extra leftover building city tiles change the point dynamic, which makes it interesting. It's kind of like a built-in sort of variability on some of the different maps and things. And then you just get some real interesting, you know, map layouts. Like you can have a bunch of the 4-pointers all clustered together. And it's kind of funny because like you'll see a lot of people rush to those, and then maybe one player ignores it, and it's like, okay, well, everybody rushed to those, but then they all end up splitting the points. Because it's like, oh, Billy goes for it, and I'm like, well, I can't let Billy have 12 points because they're all the 4s next to each other. So Francesca goes in there, and then it, like, you know, dilutes it, and then I'm over here in this scenario, like way on the other side of the map, just set up this great network of goods. So those kind of cool dynamics of like how the game kind of shuffles out at the setup. It's pretty interesting, and the game does have a lot of that. And there's a bunch of maps. I think the base game comes with 4, and you get a couple extras with the deluxe and so on. But yeah, I really enjoy it. The only thing I want to mention is there's the Cat Power expansion, which is like sort of like a kid's room or something like that, and you've got these little cat tiles, and you basically play the same game, but then if you build a factory adjacent to a cat tile, you flip it up and it's some event, and they're all bad. Like they make you end your turn or discard a contract or whatever it is. And so I don't know, I think it was put in as kind of a humorous addition to the GameFound campaign. So I don't know, I don't hate it. But like it's just something kind of wrinkly different, but I don't know that I really like it either. Like it's fun. Like if you play with a humorous mindset, which is how I played it, I was like, this is all right. It's kind of fun. But if I'm trying to just, I don't know, be extra serious or something, it just is like, okay, my turn's over. That's no fun. You know what I mean? So, but it's cats. I get it. Cats are, obstinate or whatever and ornery, supposedly. So I don't know. There's that thing, but it's just a fun. It's just like a side game, Think of it like just a fun little filler. But yeah, I definitely do recommend this game. I think it's worthwhile. It to me, kind of blends 3 games. You got definitely the Steam aspect, the brass aspect, and then kind of the ticket to ride sort of thing with the contracts, right? Because you're like, okay, I got to set this up and fulfill this, and then you draw extra, and that's kind of what your main thrust is. But then it's got some of that other, brass Steam stuff that's going on under the covers. So I think it fits a nice, like, niche where you could play this with sort of novice gamers or, people that play games all the time. And I think both sort of groups will get some will get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and you can play together. Those 2 groups can play it together, and you can kind of, the novices will kind of start to learn some of those nuances, I think, in some of these other games that are a lot more complicated and take like 2.5 hours or more. But this you can get done under an hour or so. So anyway, I really recommend it. I'm very impressed by it, and the component quality and everything, and the maps. And it's like you're kind of good to go, especially with the 6 maps. It's like how many more maps do you really need? So I feel like it's a good sort of all-in sort of package purchase in that way, where you won't be like constantly chasing maps. Maybe they'll come out with them and I'll get them, but you know what I mean? Like it's not a necessary thing. I don't feel like it's necessary at all. Yeah, so take a look. Thanks.